Gather the posse. From cowboy stew to sandwiches of the plains, the foods cowboys ate on the trail are surprising. Pork was a key part of the cowboy diet, especially in the form of salt pork, or sow belly, and bacon. It was easy to produce in bulk, making it a staple for early settlers. Sow belly comes from the fatty underbelly of the pig and is a thick, tender, uncured slab of meat. Bacon, often made from pork belly, is typically sliced into thin strips, though it can come from other parts of the pig as well. Since refrigeration wasn't an option on the move, meat had to be preserved using traditional methods. Cowboys couldn't rely on modern cooling, so they turned to salting. This process involved coating the meat with salt to draw out moisture, preserving it for long periods. To salt sow belly, pieces were laid on a layer of salt, then covered with more salt. After several days, the meat would be dried, ready for storage and cooking while on the trail. Beef jerky was a vital source of energy for cowboys during long cattle drives, providing a portable and durable meal. While smoked beef jerky was the most popular choice, cowboys also enjoyed jerky made from other meats. By the late 1800s, jerky had been a staple for centuries, with its origins tracing back hundreds of years. To preserve the meat, cowboys used various methods like sun-drying, smoking, salting, and wind exposure. These techniques kept the jerky shelf-stable for long periods. Although modern jerky is still made with similar methods, cowboy jerky was much drier, saltier, and more brittle, making it a tough but essential snack for life on the trail. Coffee was essential to cowboys' survival, just as it is for many of us today. However, their brew was much stronger than what most of us are used to. With long, grueling days ahead, they relied on bold black coffee. No milk, cream, or sweeteners, just a piping hot, pure caffeine boost to power them through the day.
I got a special treat. We're gonna make fresh coffee.
Southwestern cowboys favored a coffee brand that may be unfamiliar to many today, Arbuckle's. Each package came with a stick of peppermint candy, a sweet surprise for cowboys living a rugged, no-frills life. For chuck wagon cooks, getting the most out of every cup was essential, often reusing grounds and adding fresh ones before boiling. If you're curious just how strong their coffee was, there's a classic recipe from a 1944 cowboy book that offers a glimpse into their intense Java preference. Take 2 pounds of Arbuckle's coffee, put in enough water to wet it down, boil it for 2 hours, then throw in a horseshoe. If the horseshoe sinks, she ain't ready.
Lettuce! Lettuce!
It's a vegetable cookie. The men need the 4 basic food groups.
I got you 4 basic food groups: beans, bacon, whiskey, and lard.
Cowboys often foraged for wild plants to add variety to their meals. Spring cattle drives aligned with berry picking season, allowing cowhands to gather fresh fruits like wild grapes, sour cherries, blackberries, and elderberries. These were used to create puddings, cobblers, and pies, adding a sweet touch to their trail food, alongside wild apples and strawberries.
Green apples sliced thin, lard, flour, salt, water to bind, sugar, cinnamon, dab of butter.
For cowboys, foraged nuts provided an important source of protein. Acorns, pine nuts, and other tree nuts were commonly enjoyed. Wild herbs like sage and garlic were also gathered to add flavor to meals. Cacti, especially prickly pear, were a staple in many areas, offering hydration and nutrition. Mushrooms were harder to find in the arid West, but in other regions they were abundant. While cowhands were cautious about picking potentially toxic mushrooms, morels were a safe and tasty option when found. Corn dodgers were a popular food on the Old West Trail, and if you've seen True Grit, you might remember Rooster Cogburn using them for target practice. These cornmeal-based treats come in different shapes. Some are small, ball-like, similar to hush puppies. Others are larger and oblong, like corn pone, or even cut into squares. The ingredients are simple: cornmeal, salt, and boiling water. On the trail, cowboys would fry them in salt pork grease, adding flavor. While today, some might enjoy them with brown sugar, butter, syrup, or honey, the savory version pairs perfectly with stew or gravy, making it a versatile dish for any cowboy meal. Though the Rockies boast major rivers, don't expect shellfish when ordering Rocky Mountain oysters. They're actually fried bull testicles, not seafood.
Correct. I love oysters, but what is that? That's a Rocky Mountain oyster.
Ordering these delicacies means you'll get a plate full of testicles, usually from bulls, but occasionally pigs, bison, or sheep. A surprising dish, to say the least.
Most folks just don't seem to have a taste for testicles no more.
Testicles?
Yes, ma'am. Sheep balls.
How did this unusual tradition begin? In the Old West, ranchers castrated young bulls to prevent aggression, but nothing went to waste. The discarded bull parts were cooked up and served to cowboys. Originally roasted over hot coals these days, they're typically battered and deep-fried. The small oysters are cooked whole, while larger ones are sliced. As for the taste, it's been described as both nutty and gamey, an acquired flavor, but a staple for cowboys of the time. When a cowboy's stomach starts growling but he doesn't have time to wait for sourdough, he turns to pan de campo, or camp bread, also known as cowboy bread. Kent Rollins, a modern expert in cowboy cooking, shows us how to make this simple yet delicious bread using just a few basic ingredients. To start, gather all-purpose flour, salt, lard, oil, and a liquid like water or milk. Sift the flour, then stir in the salt. Next, blend the lard into the flour using a spoon or your hands until the mixture is crumbly. Make a well in the flour and pour in the oil, mixing it in. Repeat with another well for the liquid, kneading until the dough is smooth and no longer sticky. Roll the dough into a thick circle, place it in a Dutch oven, and bake until the top and bottom are golden brown. Quick, easy, and perfect for cowboys on the go. No rising time needed. Contrary to how old Westerns portray it, about 25% of cowboys were Black, Indigenous, or Hispanic. Mexican ranchers originally enlisted men to herd cattle, known as the vaqueros, making them the first cowboys. It's no surprise then that cowboys in South Texas enjoyed Tex-Mex flavors during cattle drives. Today, vaquero cook-offs still take place in places like San Antonio, celebrating traditional Mexican dishes with prizes. Pan de campo, as we've discussed, has Mexican roots, but so do dishes like fajitas, carne guisada, frijoles, and chili. In fact, chili con carne was a cowboy staple, filling and inexpensive, making it perfect for long days on the trail. Cowboys lucky enough to travel with a chuck wagon and their cook, affectionately called Cookie, could count on never going hungry.
Life on the trail wasn't easy, but without the chuck wagon, it would never have been possible.
Cookie was skilled at packing his wagon with foods that were simple to store and transport, making items like cured meats, coffee, lard, and potato staples. However, the most essential food on the trail was beans. Pinto beans were the top pick, though kidney and white beans were also used. These dried beans were the ideal cowboy food, affordable, lightweight, and packed with nutrients. They lasted for long stretches and were a great source of protein, making them a hearty and satisfying meal on the range. Not glamorous, but always filling. Although beans alone might seem bland, Cookie knew how to spice them up. By adding chili peppers, he transformed the humble beans into a hearty and flavorful bowl of red, better known as chili, bringing much-needed zest to the meal.
Five-alarm chili, eh? 1, 2.
The downside of beans is that once cooked, they must be eaten immediately. On the trail, without refrigeration, keeping food fresh or cold was impossible, making it tough to store leftovers. The term hot rocks might sound like precious stones, but it actually refers to an extremely hard type of biscuit. Also known as hardtack or sheet iron crackers, these biscuits were made with just 3 ingredients: flour, water, and salt. Baked multiple times to remove all moisture, they could last for years, but their taste left much to be desired. Used by soldiers during the Civil War, hardtack was often softened by soaking in water or frying it in bacon fat or lard. To make these hard, brittle crackers more edible, they were frequently dunked in liquids like water, milk, or coffee. Dunking in coffee in particular was common for practical reasons. First, it softened the tough crackers, and second, the hot liquid helped kill off the maggots and worms that often infested the hardtack. These pests, which could often be found in the biscuits, were humorously called worm castles by those who encountered them.
You're eating maggots, how do they taste?
After removing the bugs, soldiers and cowboys could finally enjoy their coffee, along with a side of coffee-flavored bread. Dried fruit was an essential item on the chuck wagon, adding a sweet contrast to the typically savory meals. Much like other frontier foods, drying fruit was a simple process, just leaving it out in the sun until it became shriveled and chewy. It was common for the cook to stew dried fruit in the morning for breakfast or turn it into a dessert in the evening. Stewed fruit was also used for making pies. To enhance the flavor, dried fruit would sometimes be soaked in water and simmered with sugar. One popular dish was a pudding made from raisins, currants, flour, sugar, and other pantry staples, all boiled together. This pudding was often served with various sauces, such as one made from dried apples and currants, bringing a sweet, comforting finish to a meal on the trail. Beyond his trusty coffee and Dutch oven, Cookie's most valuable tool on the range was his sourdough starter. While the Cowboys swapped stories around the fire, Cookie was busy caring for his starter. Before the advent of active dry yeast in the early 1940s, if Cookie wanted his bread to rise, he had to make his own sourdough starter, a mixture of flour and water that captured wild yeast from the environment. On day one, Cookie would blend flour and water and leave it in a jar or bowl. Each day, he'd feed it with a bit of starter, water, and more flour. Over time, the mixture would grow, developing into a robust starter. Once it was established, it only needed feeding once a week. This starter was the key to the soft, risen bread that fueled the cowhands throughout their long days on the trail. The cowboy diet closely resembled that of pioneers, with a strong emphasis on protein-rich foods. While beef was readily available, cowboys weren't likely to slaughter their employers' cattle during a drive. Instead, they relied on hunting wild game like buffalo, deer, elk, wild turkey, and pheasant. Meat wasn't the focus of the hunt. Any protein source was fair game, from squirrels and rabbits to more unusual options like snakes and even skunks. Out on the trail, cowboys couldn't afford to be choosy. Whatever they hunted would help keep their bellies full and their energy up for long days on the range. If you've had beef stew, you haven't truly experienced cowboy cuisine until you've tried Rascal stew, also called son of a bitch stew. This hearty dish makes use of nearly every part of a calf, from tenderloin to its heart, liver, brains, gut, marrow, tongue, and sweetbreads, leaving only the hide, hooves, and horns behind. Known also as son of a gun stew, it was a perfect example of how cowboys and cooks minimized food waste. It was a beloved change from the usual beans and bread, and chuck wagon cooks took pride in making something flavorful and resourceful, proving their creativity and thrift.